One of the most valuable combat skills you can learn in Final Fantasy XVI is how to stagger an enemy. Staggering an enemy knocks your opponent to the ground for a moment, giving you the perfect opportunity to unleash a barrage of attacks that deal extra damage without the threat of retaliation. In this Final Fantasy XVI guide video, we'll teach you everything you need to know about staggering even the most powerful opponents. Enemies don't stay staggered for long, and it's not easy to get them there in the first place. So, knowing the right moves to use and when can make all the difference in battle. Enemies that can be staggered have a yellow bar underneath their HP called a will gauge. Once their will gauge is depleted, they enter a staggered state. Every attack you land on your opponent chips away at their will gauge to varying degrees depending on what move you hit them with and your own stagger stat, which increases as you level up and is boosted by Clive's weapon. When the gauge is empty, the enemy will become staggered and fall to the ground for a moment while they recover. You can tell how quickly one of Clive's abilities will stagger an enemy by looking at the rightmost 5-star rating when hovering over a technique in the abilities menu. Combos, perfect counters, and parries are great ways to make a dent in your opponent's will gauge. But if you really want to stagger an opponent quickly, iconic abilities are the way to go, especially ones like Garuda's gouge ability. Limit Break also has the potential to obliterate your opponent's will gauge at record speed, but you may want to save that for when your opponent is already staggered and taking more damage. Decreasing the enemy's will gauge halfway will also knock them off balance for a moment, giving you a chance to land some extra hits. Using Garuda's Deadly Embrace while your opponent is off balance will pull it to the ground. When your opponents have been staggered, they're helpless, and your attacks inflict far more damage than they would otherwise. Enemies will only stay staggered for a short time, usually around 10 seconds or so take that opportunity to unleash a barrage of your strongest attacks to deal as much damage as possible. When an enemy is staggered, each strike you land will increase your damage output, up to a total of 150%. So while it's important to land as many hits as possible on your staggered opponent, you'll want to do your best to save your biggest damage dealers for when the enemy is about to come out of being staggered, since your damage percentage bonus will be at its absolute highest in those last few moments. Once an enemy recovers from being staggered, it will flash on the screen how much stagger damage they fell victim to. And that was everything you need to know about staggering your enemy in Final Fantasy XVI. For more, make sure to check out our review of the game, plus our essential combat guide. And of course, for everything else Final Fantasy, stick with IGN.